Okay, now that we've sort of chatted, talked about your progress on this Instagram clone, we're going to walk through potential solutions to, and do some, look at some of the code for my example, and then potentially solve the comment section, which is where I'm not there yet. Well, I'm ready to start integrating the comment section. So that's where we'll get. Let's take a look. So let me share my screen and let's play around here. Okay, so first off, just as the instructions instructed, I went and, let's see, readme. Okay. In the README, it gave you instructions on how to get everything set up, and then it said to start working through. Notice you need to import your dummy data. Start working through post container, search bar. I tackled the search bar first, and I also integrated with the React Strap library instead of React Bootstrap. And so because of that, so to get that installed, one of the easiest ways to do it, you need to install React Strap, which gives you the React components. And then you need to install Bootstrap as well, and then you just npm install both of those. And then all you have to do to set that up is come into your index.js file, that is the root, and import your styles at the root of your React app, and you should have it up and running. Cool. So that was pretty, let me just zoom in a little bit more. That's pretty straightforward. The instructions from React Strap. Just out of curiosity, how many of you chose to use React Strap as opposed to React Bootstrap? When I said that you could use either or, and I recommend using the 4.0 version, who implemented this with React Strap instead of React Bootstrap? Who used Bootstrap at all? I guess I should say. Nice, Alexander, good call. I love it. I think it's such a good library. If you look, what it provides for those who are unfamiliar and didn't go check it out, what it provides you with, just like React Bootstrap, is a bunch of components that are styled for you. If you look at the components library they have built, pretty much most of the stuff you would need for a modern, single page application, whatnot. Your buttons, everything's sort of uniform. You get your collapses, you get your jumbotrons. I use things like this card. This is how I built my Instagram post, was this card. So if you notice, you have like a card image, card body, card title. That's what I used. And I'll show you how I put that together in just a second. And then I use things, you have like layout options as well. So columns, I use lots of columns. Well, a row maybe is what I use actually. So, and then navigation bars. So I built my nav bar with this, with these components. And you have to get crafty. Their examples are very thin. So you have to get crafty of how you lay your stuff out. Okay. One of the things that I didn't do yet was import any icons. How many of you have good icons going through your project? You got them? Yeah, I didn't get there yet. That's one thing that I was planning on doing. So if you notice, I put some placeholder here. And then I didn't make my navigation bar sticky. It just kind of scrolls like this. Nothing works. It's all just utilitas. And yeah, Font Awesome is a great place to go and snag icons. That's where I would have gone to. Okay. All right, so this is where I just got this little, and it's not quite exactly there. Some things I would do to change this automatically, or make sure I have my icons in, of course, on my header. Let's move that over. So icons would need to be included up here. My search bar is good to go, but I need to add some functionality to that. And potentially we could solve, searching for a username. That'd be pretty easy to do. And then yeah, I need to easily work on sizing and stuff on this, but I simply just ran out of time. And then yeah, I need to get icons there and then fix my likes and So the comments section is what we're going to do right now. Cool. If you will allow it. So let's walk through some of the code, okay? So how I set my app up was very much what they expected. I haven't even ran the test to see if they function. I could probably do that later on, but so post container, which is just going to set up some state, and then we add our dummy data up to post data, okay? And then we just simply pass it down to a map function, which is going to generate a new post for each one of these. So that's all my post container does. So it really is just kind of like a, if I were to set up a search filter and things like that, I would do my search, my filtering up here, because this is the data that I need to filter away. So as a user starts typing in this search bar, I would pass that around or figure out where to do that, set that state so that it works properly. I guess if I'm searching here, I would need to actually pass data between components because of the way this is all set up. So I would either refactor my application, or, I haven't even thought about the filter yet, or I would simply refactor where this data is being sent. And then I probably wouldn't even need this post container. But either way, it's just iterating over the post data and returning a new post per return. And this is my post. So this is my Instagram post. I have a card that wraps the whole thing. And then I have a card body. And notice this image, I just, threw the border radius on. I was playing around with a ton of stuff. So trying to get things to work properly. And things got in position enough for me to say that, okay, if I spent another couple hours, I could probably really put this together. Okay. So the things that are important from my props are, if I look at this under the hood, the things that I needed to link up and pass around. Ooh, nice, validate DOM nesting. Ooh, that's probably not a good thing. Okay, so inside of my post, I have each one of these has my post data. My next thing is going to be to iterate over my comments. So as long as the comments is defined, then we'll iterate over them and list them out. Okay. So the other thing is the image URL. I had to go and change did you guys all get your images put back together? Because I noticed that the first time I cloned this, the images were all off. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I went and changed that and pushed the fix up to the GitHub project so that the next time this happens, nobody will have to run into that pain. All right. So the things that we needed to look out for: image URL, and then the thumbnail URL. So image URL, thumbnail, they're going to put those on image. Okay, I'm on an image tag. And then other things that needed to look out for were the username. So Phil's Coffee. And then likes. It's got 400 likes. This person must be liked. And then the little timestamp. Cool. So those were the things that I cared about. And then we're going to move into looping over this list of comments and then displaying them in, probably just underneath here or something, probably in between these two card texts. So notice how easy it is to get some proper layout up and running with Bootstrap. You have some pre-built components for you. So I render all of this in a card, and then inside of two different card bodies where I just have some text. The only thing I needed to kind of tweak around was put everything in a row and this could have been, I guess I can just style this to make it look a little better, but this card subtitle is just the header, right? I just kind of used it as the header. And then notice that, yeah, it's all just pre-built components that are built for me. So I just can use their default styles and then, play around with it. If you used React Bootstrap, a lot of times you kind of have to select the next. So you would go card.body, and that's fine. That's just the way they chose to implement the package or whatever. But yeah, I do love React Strap for that purpose. It's just, I need a card. I'm going to render that card over and over again. And these components are already built for you. So it really, because I just was on a time crunch and trying to do this in an hour, might as well like offload some work, right? So, and if it's good enough for Bootstrap, I think it's good enough for me because, you know, they put in a lot of effort into that library. All right, let's see. I mean, there's 1,500 different ways you could have chosen to solve this problem. You know, the biggest thing that we wanted you to think about was your components. And you have a main wrapper component, which you're feeding into the index.js, where the React DOM render is getting called. So let me just do this. So if you look, React DOM.render is being called, and we're selecting the root, okay, which is going to be found inside of public index.html. There's our ID root. Your entire React application is going to get shoved into here. It's going to get injected into here, okay? And then, let's go back. And then we're saying put everything that lives in between app as a component, and you could have ignored this. Don't need the register service worker for anything we're doing for the intents and purposes of this class. But you could have just, now we're saying find that element by ID called root and mount up our React application here. So if we go to our app, save. If we go to app, you'll see that that's where everything is existing, right? I kind of made this container to, you know, do a flex column, and then I was right before I texted you guys and said, hey, we're gonna get together. I was working on some gutters here just to like do some margin. I tried to do justify content, but Bootstrap was like overriding everything. So I would have to figure out like what kind of column to put that in is kind of my next piece there. But either way, neither here nor there. My search bar is this search bar up here. It lives up top. And then I have a wrapper to wrap my post container that I was trying to style and lay out all fancy. Some things I did get laid out fancy were, you know, some margins on the left and the right so that it centers, you know, and scales a little bit. So it's not super responsive, but it's okay for an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes, a little bit more, or a little bit less, I mean. Cool. So awesome. Search bar. We haven't gone over that yet. Search bar, it's the same thing, just importing a bunch of components from React-Strap. So we have our navigation bar, which is going to lay everything out horizontally across the screen. And I have, you know, some of my own custom styles, which is nice because you can, well, a lot of this stuff is just kind of shoved in content, but you can add some custom styles and whatnot. I did this so that I could get a pixel on the bottom and one or a half a pixel border on the bottom that looks a little nicer than just the default. So if you notice, this is my only style that I'm overriding. Then my navbar brand is all this stuff on the left. And, you know, really, literally, I just used a pipe for that little spacer in between. You know, I could have wrapped this in a span and then styled that span to make it less thick and ugly. And then, you know, this is all just customized. I just threw stuff in there customized. And then if you notice, I'm pulling in some assets. This is kind of a big deal as well. How many of you struggled with finding the Instagram logo and importing it and getting it into your application? No one struggled with that? Maybe a couple? Didn't get there? No problem. I'm going to push my solution up to a branch called Ryan Solution. Yeah, Google image search works, and you could have gotten just the URL from there and added it right here. But I just chose the relative path solution where I created my own assets file, and then I pulled in some assets. And then all you have to do in React, and it's set up this way. Now I realize why this is a bad logo. But anyway, I should have done like a clear background logo. But anyway, so Create React app is set up so that you can import assets. You can just, basically this asset here is sort of being exported as like an object in the React namespacing, right? In our import statement. So I can pull it in as such and say, hey, so they have set this up beforehand for you so you can do this. This is a big pain in the butt. If you ever set up your very own React application with like Webpack and whatnot, to be able to do that is kind of a bummer. So to have this completely abstracted away from you so that you don't have to spend time figuring out how to pull in PNG, GIF, JPEG files, all these different types of files, right? You can just throw them in a folder and just namespace them what you want. So I'm saying the instant camera, the Instacam, is this little guy. And then you notice that I'm just wrapping them. I have a layout to flex them, over to get them side by side, lay them out nice. And then I have a wrapper that's a fixed height. And then I have a logo, which is 100% height. So it just confines itself to that height. So really, really easy solution to a very common problem. But I will tell you, I spent the most time on this. Of all my application, I spent the most time on this. And if you notice, it's still wonky. I was just trying to get it for, demo purposes ready. So I would spend more time to get that perfected, but it's wonky. So yeah, take my word for it. If you haven't fallen in love with this idea yet, this is really cool. You get a relative path to essentially an object, and we're just using the import from statements. So it's pretty nice. Cool. Other than that, there's not a ton else going on. So why don't we start building our comment section, and you guys can kind of see it in action. We can kind of see what we would do here. So I'm just going to build it in a way that just lets me lay stuff out to it. So first thing that I would do, of course, is create a new file called commentsection.js. And this is going to be a read-only. So I'm just going to import React. Read-only would be what type of component? Meaning all I want this component to do is render props to the DOM. I don't care that it contains its own state. So I'm going to create a functional component. And then we'll just call it comment section. Just a plain old JavaScript object that returns a comment section. Comment. And then here's the thing. We will have a comment section, but the comment section is going to have a makeup of multiple comments. So now my mind is racing on how I would want to implement this. Let's go down one path. And we can return. We can return to Eden if things break down. Cool. Right on. Sorry about that. Okay, so now in app.js, let's find, and this is so cool. Like if you get into VS Code like I have, there's a really cool trick here. So actually, we need to put this in our post container, huh? Because it's a part of that. So let's go to post container. Let's go find that. So inside a post container, inside a post, this is where we want it. We want it in here. We decided that earlier on. And we're just going to render an entire comment section. So let's do that. So first, I want to pull in comment section real quick. And notice, this is really cool. Notice that with IntelliSense, with my Visual Studio Code text editor, and a lot of editors do this as well. I'm not saying this is unique. But auto import from, and then it's going to find the namespace. and I can just click it and look, it appeared up top as well, and it's just right there. So that's super cool to me. Saves you a lot of time. And notice that we got our comment. Cool. So this little post is going to need to render multiple comment sections based on our props. So what I want to do is say, I need a conditional here, right? I need to check to see if props.comments.length or if it's even defined. Sorry, props.post.comments. Is that even defined? Then render the comment, else null for now. And it's pretty instantaneous when this is getting mounted that will be there. But that's just a fail-safe because we're getting some data. Let's look at React. We're getting some data that is nested, right? I thought about this beforehand, meaning I have comments in here. And what if this array is empty? I don't want to render anything if that's the case. I'm just going to render null, right? And then what if that data is not there right away? But anytime that this thing mounts, it should be fine. But either way, I want to now map over that stuff and return a comment for every single thing. So in our nested ternary here, it's not a nested ternary, it's just a ternary. We're going to say props.post.comments.map. And for each comment, return a comment. And that's where comments of undefined. Okay, so that's where so we need to make sure that props.post is defined. Nope, it's not gonna, because it's trying to mount it without it being there. So here's the question. Oh, see post? Where's that? Oh, thanks. Comment. Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. You saved my bacon. Cool, because I was like, we are doing that check. We're making sure that the object's defined before I look for the comments. Thank you. 10 points for your Hogwarts house of choice. And then our comment section, even though I want this to be an individual comment, well, either way, we need to pass down the comment to the comment section. So now we just pass this down as, I want to see, can I make this clever? No, we'll just say comment equals comment. Cool. So now inside of every single comment, if I go and inspect this thing inside of the React DevTools, I want to look for comment section. And if you notice, we have the data for each of our comment sections that we're rendering. So we have our username and our comment. Cool. So now we are going to render this inside of a card text as well, just to keep with our stuff. So it kind of keeps things in line and spaced out nicely. And now we got to go build our comments. So it's nice because I didn't have to wait for data. I already had data piped into here. Move between lines is, what is it? Option. So either Alt or Option on Mac. Whatever line you're on, Alt or Option. And then if you want to duplicate lines, you hold Shift Alt down or up, and it'll copy the line up or down. And then you can take the whole line and move the whole thing up like that. Yeah. I highly recommend looking up the cheat sheet for VS Code shortcuts. It's just right on their website. Pretty easy to navigate and find. Oh yeah, so arrow plus up arrow, down arrow. So yeah, wherever you want the direction to go, you go up or down. So hold Alt, and go up or down, whatever. Cool. Comment section. It is not enough for us to just render a comment. We're going to render multiple stuff here, but I'm wondering if we need some React strap action. Because I probably want to render this in a row. Layout. We're going to look for row, and that's all I really care about. I don't care about a column or anything. I just want it to have, so let's import okay, you notice how it left justified a little bit, and we can tweak it. Because now it's rendering across the whole span of this entire thing. So we can tweak it and we can do more column. Okay. And then we would want to put in our data. Cool. How do their columns work? Maybe I do want some columns here. Oh, and then you just put the excess. So you just say the class name. I guess you just put it as a property. Is that what you do? Oh, XS6 would be column 6. Okay. So I could do, so if we look, we might as well look at our comments. Comments kind of need to be, so if we just like put the, yeah, I guess we could do like a, I don't know. What do you guys think I should do here? I should probably do a 3, XS3 for the username. What do you think? Render all the things ever. Username, comments, don't know the actual sizing. Okay. Is it just username? And then we would probably put this one to auto. And is it comment? What is our stuff? .text. And it's got to be on comment. Oh, easy there, Trigger. It's perfect. So probably not a 3, and maybe not even columns at all. Let's just try without columns for a second. Starting to get better. What should I do here? Span for the username, okay. How should I style this? What do I need to put here? Okay, font weight. Do a 600 like suggested. Font size, maybe a good 14 pixels. I don't know. That looks wonderful. And then, I mean, I want the, so should this be a span as well, the text? Because we want this to be in line, so might as well do an inline element, right? I think we're fine to do it. Why not? Let's live dangerously. And this would be the comment text. So now we can start, since we have a class on that, well, I might need to do some defining. Comment text, let's say font size as well as 14. Yep, absolutely, Stephanie. We'll get there. I guess we can just call this a sort of a pseudo MVP, and I can kind of walk through how things are working the way they are. Okay? Because this is fine for now. We would have to just figure out, you know, maybe we just bump this down to 12 pixels. But I don't know. Either way, we can play around with it for days and try and get the stuff to work a little better. But for now, it's just there. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. And as I walk through this, kind of walk backwards through this again, we will have you ask me questions along the way. Okay. So I used Create React app to bootstrap this application. I'm using React Strap for some custom styling and whatnot. Okay, that's pretty clear. The idea here is that at the very beginning of our project, this is already set up for us, but we're just throwing our app at the DOM. This React DOM.render is just throwing our app at the DOM. It's just saying, hey, go and mount our React application. Anything that is found inside the React component, we're going to add it to the DOM. Okay? So in here, we have two components. Right? How do I know that these are components and not DOM elements? Should be pretty obvious, but how do I know this is a component? Yeah, it's self-closing. That works. You could also make components that wrap other components, right? It's capitalized. That's the big deal. Okay? Capitalized meaning that React will search for this thing, because if I lowercase this, and I call this search bar as well, what's it going to do? It's going to try and mount a random thing called search bar. See that? So the React engine knows when you capitalize so capitalization is huge. Okay? Otherwise, it's just going to try and mount something that's not an element, right? I think I did that demonstration for you guys earlier this week. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, it's capitalized. We're pulling it in from a place called components. So these are just ideas. Also, my text editor gives me a little bit of a hint. Shows me that this is just a component, right? So the bigger thing here is some props that are getting passed down via state. So let's look at post container and let's see what's going on here. We're importing a bunch of dummy data from the file called dummy data. So if we navigate over there, you're going to see an array of objects. Each object is correspondent with a post to Instagram. So we have a username, thumbnail, image URL, how many likes the user's post has, a timestamp, and some comments in an array. Okay, pretty simple. I mean, this is just JavaScript right here. So nothing super over the top. So inside of post container, we are rendering a Instagram card by passing that data down for each element in that array. Okay, we loop over this data and we create a card, a post, for each element in this array. Let's go find that. So all we're doing is returning a div that inside that div, we are mapping over the post data that's on state. Component did mount is setting our state with the dummy data. We map over that post data and return that post for each post in our post data. Okay, this is the bread and butter of where it's all working right here. Because our state is containing the data that we have for our app. And then we iterate over that list of data and we return a component for every single item in that array. In turn, while we are returning a component, so for each element in this array, we map over it, return it. For each element in this array, for each object, pass that data down and also return that data, return that element right here, that going to be DOM element. So now if we look at post, post then has all of that data being displayed and laid out in a user-friendly way. So the key here, once again, is the state to props. And once again, we pass those props even further, and we map over the comments and pass each comment that's associated with each post down to comment section. How are we feeling now, just out of curiosity, Stephanie? It's crazy how great this is, like, once you see it. The key to React is state to props. So what we do with data and how we pass it around, okay? Definitely kind of looks like cheating, but it's front-end development. You know, I have all of my stuff put together. And I was able to rapidly prototype this in, you know, a short period of time. Not to, I mean, it's all because somebody built something for me. If I had to go and build all this stuff out, there's no way. It'd take me, a week to get what I had done. Maybe not that, but. Okay, so remember the key to it is all about where you pass things down. So would you guys benefit from kind of learning how React operates under the hood, so to speak, like just with a plain HTML file and a couple of CDNs? Would that be beneficial to you all, or is that, it's really up to you guys. We still have, 15 minutes left. And I want to make sure that any questions you could potentially have. Yeah, search bar. Let's do search bar one more time because we didn't go over that. So search bar, it's pretty much just a plain. In fact, I don't even need component. I could take this whole thing and refactor it real quick. because search bar is not doing anything with state. Oh yeah, I want that. And you get rid of this. It's not a class. Const. So search bar is just a plain old functional component. Its only purpose is to render DOM elements. There's no data being passed around at all. Nothing works. This is not functional. If I click, it just refreshes the page. It's just an href. So really, it's just a navigation bar that I'm pulling in from React-Strap. Okay. All right, let's take a look at React. Just, kind of clear your minds, take a big deep breath. You're going to get to play around with React on Saturday in your project. So let's just do this from scratch. So let me, without any create React app, without any major boilerplate, let's create a, and I'll save this to just my desktop. And everything that I'm going to show you comes directly from Training Camp. So I have been masterfully, not really, I have been scrambling to put together this React curriculum and basically start from scratch. So I'm going to pull this out and we're going to render this bad boy. Save it to desktop called index.html. There we are. Cool. Replace. I don't care about the other HTML file that's there. Okay, so at its core, hello world from React. We're in a React application. Okay. How do I know it's a React application? Well, all I have is a single div. This is at the end of the day what React is doing for you. Create React app will boilerplate all this away and you'll get an index.html file and then you'll get everything else. Yeah, so Jesse, you're absolutely right. If I was to implement the search bar, I would probably control state somewhere else though, and pass it back up through props. So you could do it your way, but I would not even hold state there. I would just pass the props back up. Pass the change. So on change, just fire the event and send it back up the chain. So, okay, so check this out. My element, React under the hood, anytime you create an element, anytime you use component, or anytime you create a functional component or anything, it's using this API, this function called createElement. So notice what I pass to it is the h1 and then some options of attributes that I want appended to my element and then some text. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So once it gets put into and notice where it is. So div right here inside of a JavaScript tag, we are selecting that div by the ID and pushing this stuff into it. Okay, so H1 gets created. H1, the type of element you want created. Okay, the potential attributes you want on that. So class heading. What? Cool. And then any inner children. And this inner children could be anything. It could be another DOM element. React.createElement. Pass a div inside that H1 because we're crazy like that. We're going to render null. I don't care about appending anything to it. And then some more text. Save that. Some more text. And then if you look, we have an H1 with a div inside of it. So this is what React does for you under the hood. Imagine if you had to build your app like this, right? This would be pretty painful, but everything sort of gets passed up through the React ecosystem. The virtual DOM knows how to go and read your classes, read your components, and turn them into these DOM elements, just like I'm doing here. Okay, so let's refactor this. We're going to use Babel because I need to take this and turn it into JSX. So let's actually comment this out. And let's actually, at the same time, I need to get the Babel standalone package, which is in here. There it is. Cool. So otherwise, my application wouldn't work. There we go. Hello, React. Okay, we are empty. Ooh, I had some other stuff going on here. Interesting why it wants to auto format that. Okay, you shouldn't care. So now I'm going to create my element and set it equal to that same thing we just had. But this time, and I'm going to say class name equals header. Is that what I called it? Okay, and then we're going to wrap this in a div, or it's going to be wrapping a div that says some text. Some more text. And then I need this, because that all went sideways. It's crazy that my text editor is, okay. Is this going crazy or is it just me? It's just me. I could turn off my autosave. So look, everything that we just did with create element is now abstracted away because we can use Babel to take our JSX. This is not HTML. It's closer to JavaScript than it is HTML. Okay? So we can take that and we can just throw it to the DOM just like we were. We're using Babel to be able to do this. So now let's abstract that one step further and let's create a component to do this for us. Now, what is a component? What is a component in JavaScript? What type of thing is it? I mean, the most basic component. Yeah, it could be an object, but in this case, it's just a simple JavaScript function, right? That's just going to return, like you can use components as classes or objects to create all this stuff together, to piece it all together that way, right? And we're just going to return that same h1. My gosh, my formatter hates me because I'm in, yeah, JavaScript land. We'll leave it though for now. I mean, I'm in HTML, but like it's, yeah, my editor's being lame. And I have a problem. You kidding me? Okay, auto formatter, you go by. Okay, and this needs to return our h1. Why doesn't it like that? Functions are not valid as React child. That is not true. It's not what I'm returning here. Just give me a second to debug this. It is one, it's an h1, I guess. No. Let me grab it straight from my documentation, my stuff. Yeah, take this off maybe. Still, nope. Okay, let me try this. Just copy and paste, because I did this earlier today and it was fine. Target. Okay, there we go. This is working now. Okay, so we'll just return that H1 because it makes more sense to do that. It says some more text. And this is the whole premise of React. We take some sort of DOM, okay, and we abstract it into these things called components. And we put these components together, and whatever data needs to be shared between components, we set up on state and pass around as props. So in this case, we don't really care much about any state or anything, so I'm not concerned about any of that. What I am concerned about is this idea of components, compartmentalized pieces of code that do one thing, and they do one thing really well. So if I had like a button that is going to be some new fancy button and have that return a button whose text is something like props.text, and change this here to props. Now I have another encapsulated piece of code whose only purpose it is to return an element. Okay, and I guess I could put this as type button or whatever, but now I can pass this in. And I can create as many buttons as I want. We got to put some sort of props in there or default the props to something. So I'm going to pass down text as button 1. Okay. Not very big, not very great, but if I did this as many times as I wanted, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not 61, take a look. All the buttons I could ever ask for, right? And the only thing that I'm doing and changing is the props that I'm passing down. I created one thing and I'm reusing it over and over and over again. Now, in the case of a button, this isn't like super useful, but imagine if you had like a bunch of different, you know, pages and templates and everything you could, you know, ever ask for, right? So at its very core, this is all React is. A single element that gets rendered to a target or some root, right? That gets rendered to an HTML document, and that it is a composed, you know, application of a bunch of different elements. Yeah, how could you set a default value for this? Well, with React, well, I wonder if I could do this, dot default props. So now if I passed one without it, I'm crossing my fingers, that worked. Default. You just select your function, your functional component or your class component by name, and then say the default props that we care about, we want added to it. And a lot to your credit, we actually did a lesson on prop types last night. And I don't think you were here yet. So if you want, you can, you know, change that. Yeah, I could definitely do that as well. So the difference between doing that, Andrew, and this is I am setting a property on my button called default props that React reads and does for me. Otherwise, I could potentially have some, markup that's, or some logic in my, markup that doesn't need to be there. But either way, it's all the same. So now if I had like an on-click handler that just reported back to me its props, you can see even further how, some of this functionality, I have one thing that's doing one thing really well. You know, this could be potentially for you, Jesse. This could be how you solve. You know, you could do this. Oh, you could do this again, but you could do it with an input. So let's try it with an input real quick, and then I'll let you all go. So my capital input here, and we'll say input type. And we could even make this a dynamic input, props.type. Default the type to a text, why not? On change, fire some sort of props handler that we pass down, but in this case, I'll just console.log, props.name, okay? And then we'll say the placeholder will be our props.text now. And since since inputs are self-closing, okay? So now let's select our input, select some default props, and set that equal to our object, and say that the default type will be text. Okay, if it's not supplied, we're just gonna get text. Don't care about that, but default name will be, we don't want multiple names, so we don't want to default the name. So that's where you would say .prop types is required, right? You'd say, hey, you have to pass a name for this. Otherwise, it's not going to work out well. But placeholder is different. You know, we take it and we say, or in this case, we'll just say props.text, and I will send up props.text too. Okay. Placeholder default. Cool. Now let's render a bunch of these instead of a bunch of buttons. I still want our default button there. Text for this one we'll put as search, and then we'll let it default to the type text. Render our page. Cool. Now if you looked, we got on change would send this up to props.handle something, handle search or whatever in a React app. Okay, if I supplied a button without any text, we're going to get our default. Send that text back up. Search button. There you go. So I hope this demystifies React at least a little bit. We're just using functions now to build DOM elements. Functions and objects. If you use the class, you're using an object. Yeah, it really is not much more than this. The magic happens when you pass your component to render, and you also pass this stuff to. In fact, I wonder if there's babel.js.io. I wonder if there's a way to say, I wonder if this will just recognize it as React. That is amazing. Babel, you geniuses. Okay, so notice React did its thing. Look at what we got out of this. So this just took my presentation and made it go backwards. So our app component, var app equals a function. Notice that, it's just a function, just like this is down to ES5, right? That returns react.createElement. So returns some wrapper div. Don't want to mess that up. Cool. So return some React create element. We pass it a div. Notice there's no attributes here. If I put an attribute here like class name equals some adders, some attribute. Notice we get an object full of attributes. OnClick equals a function console.log clicked. Okay, look what happened. We get this object of attributes, things that get placed onto our potential DOM elements. This is just JavaScript, JSX. So class name is attribute. We have an onClick function that is called onClick, and it returns, because it's anonymous, right? It returns a console.log saying that it was clicked. And then we have in here React.createElement and h1 tag with some more text. And then here's the kicker. All of this other stuff, man, this is so cool. I don't know why I've never done this before. All this other stuff are just functions as well that are using React.createElement. So this is React under the hood. This is what React is doing. So if you look here, now we return, createElement returns a button, which is just a function. It's just a callback function that's returning a button, a call to React.createElement. How brilliant is that? So sorry I went over in time, but I hope that the demonstration here has shown you that under the hood, React isn't doing much more than just passing a bunch of functions around to its compiler. And then the React compiler knows how to go and create the DOM elements. And that's really all there is to it. And I'm not trying to say, oh, it's so simple, because it's not. It's actually really, really complex. But it allows you to abstract all of this. Instead of having to write all of this JavaScript code, you just write it like this, and it's so much easier, you know? You get that many lines of code to do all of this stuff. Cool beans? Any other questions, comments? How are we feeling now about React overall? We went into purposes of the demo because I asked you, but it seemed like there's still a little bit of like, why are we doing this? Why would we even use something like this? Well, really, the reasons to that are all found right here in Training Kit. So if you want to, you can kind of follow along, or you can read through at least what I think and what our team thinks is important to know about React and what it is and why we have it. But then you can kind of go through the React documentation and learn about why it's important to think with React. So I recommend you looking at this objective if you're just like, why on earth React, and what is it doing and what are we using it for? Cool. All right, gang. You've borne with me long enough. I'm going to get this this little kind of solution demo and a lot more styling than anything for this project. But once you pass the state around properly, and once again, I love React so much. I am always around 9 to 5 Pacific, or 8 to 5 Pacific. So please reach out to me during the week if you ever get a break at your day job, or if you can take a lunch break and chat me about React or anything. That's where I'm going to be living the next few months of my life, is straight in React and Redux land with Lambda School. So I'm always here to chat about things. And once again, pay attention to changes that are coming up. I am rapidly changing the curriculum, making it better and more tightened up and flow and making it flow better. So that's my primary responsibility right now, is all React, intermediate React, Redux, and then front end project are my babies right now. So please reach out. I'm always around, even after hours sometimes. So all right, we'll talk to you soon. I hope this was a fun week, and I hope Saturday you knock that sprint challenge out of the park. So